Welcome to the Radio Free Hub City Newscap, live from Honeypot Acres Studio in Hagerstown, Maryland. I'm your host, DJ Warbuckler, the Red Pen Yahoo, and joined by me today is DJ BB, the Dingbat. So what is the Newscap? It's a podcast format show where we talk about local and global news that matters the most to Hub City. The full recording of this show will be available through Spotify as well as X for replay. Unlike our regular monthly newscap, which will be next week, by the way, tonight's episode is an in-depth look at a single topic important to Hub City residents. Now, let's take a look at tonight's focus topic. Tonight's focus topic is going to be the struggles of actual local news outlets and how House Bill 1258 might have helped level the playing field a little bit. And we'll dive a little more into some of the other possible ways of helping out local news outlets as well. But BB, I know this is something that both of us have a lot of passionate things to say about, but why don't you get us started? Tell us a little bit about House Bill 1258 here in Maryland.
Okay, so it was one of the few bills, and I do mean few, that Governor Moore has vetoed in the last 2 years. And I think the total number that he's vetoed is 7. And by comparison, the two, governors prior to Moore were at roughly 100 or so by this point. When they were the governor. So he really does, not veto a lot. But this particular bill wanted to create an online database, like a website, for the Registrar of Wills, where it was like a centralized location where people could go see all of the announcements from all of the registrars of will from every county. And as of right now, that information is usually printed in local newspapers and online for local newspapers. So the governor said that he felt that there was a lot of pushback with digitizing that information, and he felt like it would undercut local news outlets. But I don't think, and I'm certainly not saying he didn't do any research or anything, but I think it would have helped if he had shown some sort of data that explained that local newspapers or indie outlets are getting these announcements anyway, because from my experience, they are not. And a lot of the things that they are printed in, the channels and outlets, are actually owned by national conglomerates. The focus is on the state or the tri-state area or what have you. And we know that there are not very many independent, truly local news outlets in Maryland. So I don't know. I had to read it like 3 times because I wasn't quite sure what he meant. You know what I mean? He seemed to be thinking that this was somehow in favor of the little guy, the small indie outlet. And I just didn't get the feeling that he was super abreast of the reality of the local news outlet situation.
Yeah. Well, and so, the main justification for vetoing this bill was not the accessibility of the news, of the public notices or anything like that. The main justification was literally the local news outlets need the revenue.
Right.
And so I honestly take some serious offense to that, because as a local news outlet, I don't see that revenue. You know who sees that revenue? USA Today. Right. Because USA Today owns, I think, a significant chunk of our newspapers here in the state of Maryland, as well as across the country. I think that it's like a total of 4 or 5 companies that own most of the newspapers across the U.S. now.
And I think we probably should mention, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I forgot to mention that where the money is coming from is that the government that is responsible for posting, death notices, marriage, things like that, they actually pay these papers. So I think that's maybe where the disconnect is people think that
Right.
anybody that's printing these notices must be getting some sort of monetary compensation, and that is not the case. So maybe that'll help explain where our kind of disbelief was coming from.
Yeah. So the way this works is they have to take out a classified ad. Okay. Now whether that be, and by the way, I think this was supposed to be a stepping stone for this to happen with other public notice types as well. And the way it works is, you're legally required to put out a public notice about something, and you're legally required to put that public notice in the newspaper, whether you want to or not. And the problem with that is, and I did the math. I actually got a quote to run a public notice. It's a 71 line notice, and I actually used, the reason I went with 71 line is because that was actually the size of a public notice that was recently ran in Frederick County. To run a 71 line public notice for 2 consecutive weeks costs $300, over $300 in a newspaper. So that just to give you all an idea, $350 was actually our total revenue for the radio station last year. So that means that just a single public notice would almost double our revenue if people were required to put public notices with us instead of in the newspapers. Now, I'm not advocating for that. I'm not saying that they have to, they should make it so that I have to, get that money. Now, would I turn that money down? No. But that's the thing is we're depriving the option for choice. We're depriving the option for competition. And when you do that, you end up paying $300 for 71 lines of text. And that's the result.
Yeah.
And, and Governor Moore even said in his statements about it, he's like, yeah, he knows that there's a concern about the costs, but we have to figure out a different way. Okay, great. Well, so let's figure out that different way. Maybe that different way is you allow the company to, or you allow whoever has to meet that public notice, you let them pick what media outlet they publish it in. Say yes, they can. Yes, you have to publish it in a media outlet.
Right.
That's fine, but then don't require it to be a print newspaper. Okay, somebody.
Right, and to be clear, the bill was not asking to cease printing in the local papers. Right. Or any paper. It was just saying that we should also have an online database that people should be able to access for free that has the same information. They were kind of saying the opposition was kind of saying well, who in the world would subscribe to a newspaper when they can get it online for free? That's exactly the point. Yep. Because things like that are public notice. That's what they're for. If you're changing your name, when people get married or divorced, when people pass away, that is information that people in your community and your area might need to know. They might need to contact an estate attorney. They might need to realize that assets are being divided somewhere. If you have invested in anything like a business or somebody's house or whatever, this is information that should be easily accessible. And I think that kind of seems like they know that the only reason that many people are keeping a subscription to a traditional news setup is that they don't want to miss very important announcements for the public. And it's kind of people shouldn't be punished for that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
If you thought that people just really were getting a whole lot out of your news and they really just love your newspaper, they love the comics, they love the opinions, then you're not going to care if the death notices are posted on the state of Maryland website. Okay, you're just not going to. DNR posts stuff like that all the time. Yes, the local paper will tell you. Even we ran articles about invasive species and stuff like that. That information is also free on the government website. It's not It's not that big of a deal. But if you're not offering anything else to somebody, and that is the only reason that they're keeping a subscription to whatever your newspaper is, that it might be time to rethink what you are printing.
Yeah, I agree. Well, and that is one of the problems that a lot of people have with, some of the local papers across the state now, is that the local papers aren't actually even printing local news, or they're covering absolutely bare minimum. They're not doing anything. It's hilarious. One of the justifications was that the press needs to be the watchdog for local government. And yet, I run stories here at Radio Free Hub City, which are probably a lot more in-depth, looking at what local government is doing, especially when they're not doing something properly. I run those stories a lot more in-depth than any of the other outlets around in the area. So, what's the disconnect here? I'm very, very sad to see that. So,
yeah, and I mean, I would be really interested to know if Governor Moore had any knowledge of the state study and the piece that the University of Maryland did.
Yeah.
Because
I'm
that seemed to.
Yeah, I'm actually looking at that right now, and there's a lot of mention in here about about the newspapers being owned by someone else. For example, Herald Mail here in Washington County is owned by Gannett, which is the same company that owns the USA Today. Frederick News Post is owned by Ogden Newspapers in West Virginia. And, I think that the only actual major newspaper in Maryland that I'm aware of that's actually independently owned now, which it wasn't the case for the longest time, but it now is the Baltimore Sun. The Baltimore Sun is actually owned by a Maryland, Baltimore resident. So thank goodness for that. Thank goodness.
Yeah, and I've noticed a giant. They really have updated the writing style and the content focus just in the short amount of time.
Yeah.
There have been major changes at the Baltimore Sun. Very noticeable changes and very palatable changes, I must say.
Yeah.
It seems like somebody put a lot of thought into it, is what it seems like. Is that a lot of thought and care went into the transition, and I think that's wonderful.
So let's talk a minute about some of the results that University of Maryland did. So this was actually the Merrill College. I'm sorry, the Philip Merrill College of Journalism did a study called the Maryland Local News Ecosystem Study. We were featured in the study. In fact, I was supposed to go down when they unveiled the study, but unfortunately, I was sick that day. They talk about how fragile Maryland's local news ecosystem is. Right now, they didn't just look at just newspapers; they looked at all of the local outlets. So, Baltimore County has 28 outlets, which that is fantastic. I am so glad to see that they have that many local outlets in Baltimore County. And then Baltimore City has 5 additional outlets. So that's absolutely fantastic that we have that much reporting. And then Anne Arundel County, Montgomery County, Prince George's County, Wacomico, Worcester County. I'm sorry, I'll stop at Wacomico County. All of them have at least 10 local outlets in there. Now, a lot of them are niche outlets, okay? Some of them are going to be stuff that's, just covering opinion of local government stuff, but that's fine. That kind of coverage is critical. But then you get down to Worcester County, Frederick County, Howard County, St. Mary's, and Talbot. All of those counties only have 5 to 6 news outlets. Carroll County, Charles County, Kent County have 4 outlets. Allegheny, Dorchester, Queen Anne's, and right here in Washington County only have 3 outlets. Cecil, Garrett, Harford, and Calvert have 2. Somerset has 1 local news outlet for the entire county. Caroline County does not have a local news outlet. All of their news is from outside of the county, from neighboring counties. That terrifies me. That really does. But you know, and we'll look at Washington County. So Washington County, we used to have 4. Okay, and that's dropped down to 3 now because of the fact that WDBM, which is now DC News Now, relocated to closer to Washington, D.C., and I think they're broadcasting out of, I want to say Charlestown now is where they're at, something like that. But you know, the whole thing with, you know, Washington County, so now we have 3 outlets. And I'm going to read a direct quote from the local news ecosystem study because I love the way they said this. Washington County features 3 outlets offering news and information as well, and together these appear to offer a more robust sense of community than outlets in neighboring Allegheny. All right, because Allegheny, it has a Facebook page called Tri-State News that's associated with a group of local radio stations. It has a daily newspaper, which is Cumberland Times News. That's going to be their main source. And also there's a website for WCBC Radio that publishes short news items. So that's the 3 in Allegheny. Here in Washington County, we have Herald Mail, we have Hancock News, and we have us, Radio Free Hub City. And that's it. And that terrifies me. Because Herald Mail is, unfortunately, it is not locally owned. It's you know, and it used to be owned by Shores Communications, but they had a lot of local control then. Now they're owned by Gannett. Now I've seen a significant amount of, they're just republishing USA Today articles. They publish some local news. I'll give them credit. But at the same time, I also know that they're struggling, you know, with some of the coverage, in that they've had to significantly cut down their news crew. They sold off their main building in Hagerstown. I think they have a smaller office they have somewhere now in downtown. But it terrifies me that for 90% of Washington County, because, and I'm glad that Hancock has their own news site, their own newspaper, by the way. I'm so glad on that, because I don't traditionally cover Hancock because it's so freaking far away. But, you know, the only thing I'll sometimes cover is going to be, you know, if they've got, you know, like special events up there or what have you. But I'm so glad they've got that site up there, that, you know, that news up there. But Herald Mail, if something happens to them, we're it. That terrifies me. That terrifies me.
And it does.
You know,
I've noticed, I kind of go out of my way before, you know, I write on something, to just kind of check headlines and make sure that nobody just put the story out 5 minutes before we did, because we don't all want to cover the same thing. That's not helpful to people. And I have noticed that the Herald Mail recently, and I'm not cracking on the Herald Mail, I'm just saying, I have noticed that they're really shying away from in-depth coverage of anything.
Yeah, well, but you know what? I'm not going to fault them for that. And the reason I'm not going to fault them for that,
no, I don't either. Because they're not, you know, it's very hard to go in depth when, I mean, you know, yes, it only turns out to be a page or so printed, but there are days and weeks of research and talking to people and interviewing people that go into some of these articles. And if you don't have the staff to do that, or if you've got other stories that are more of a priority to write, like, I completely understand. And so I understand. I think that's great that the University of Maryland pointed out that everybody covering different things helps the community, because if everybody runs the same thing, that's not really helpful at all. And at that point, it's more of just like an opinion, in which way did they pitch this, as opposed to what did the other outlet say. And you start really getting, compare and contrast, when really all people need is the facts, and they can make up their own opinion on whatever those might be. So
yeah, absolutely. And like I said, I would be very sad if something happened with the Herald Mail and they went away. The reason I'd be so sad is because that means then it all falls to us. And I'm terrified by that, because, I mean, it's literally you and me and occasionally some sports contributors. I mean, we don't have the staff to fully cover everything that's going on in the county. And, we don't have the staff to fully cover everything that's going on in Hagerstown. And I used to say that we're the number 3 local news outlet. And I'm terrified to say we're now the number 2 local news outlet for the Hagerstown area. That terrifies me. It really does.
Right.
Especially because we're on such a shoestring budget. And, we're barely breaking even on just the hosting expenses. I'd love for us to eventually get paid, for the time we put into this. But, so we're barely breaking even. I don't even know how Herald Mail's surviving. I really don't. Because I know they're.
And I think it's one of those situations where it really is an ethical thing. You know what I mean? Like, somebody has to get people the news. Like, people need information. They need easily accessible information. And then I think one thing that probably really was a gut check to a lot of us was that Facebook got rid of their news feed. And that very often featured local or state news, like, depending on where your account was. And I know that for myself personally, like, I have my Google News feeds and things like that, but those are all kind of tailored to things that I would need for business or journalism. And my Facebook was purely just stuff that I find interesting. And so you can still publish news on Facebook, but you have to do it from the outlet's Facebook page. So if people aren't following these outlets, they're not getting news on social media anymore like they were. And I think that really, like really a lot of people are like, okay, now where do I go to get this information? Like, do I really have to follow CNN and Reuters and MSN and everybody else? Do I have to follow these people on social media and hope that I see their posts? I mean, local news is really, really important right now, because that pretty much everyone uses Facebook, and that just went away. Poof, it just doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah. And so huge shout out to Philip Merrill College on this, by the way. Because they give us a glowing review in here, talking about how we provide thorough coverage of local government, crime, and news events is what they said. And that was kind of a gut check, because it's not as thorough as I'd like it to be. It's as thorough as we can with the time we can allow to it, that we're basically working for free. With the hopes that eventually we'll get enough people to support us that, we'll actually be able to start paying ourselves. But, it's very interesting to see how this is going on. I used to say government closest to the people can serve the people best. Well, I think the same thing applies to news outlets now. A news outlet that is closest to the people is going to be able to serve those people best. So, I'm so grateful to everybody that listens, that or reads our website or listens to our podcast here. And it's very encouraging. I don't have the numbers right now, but I know we're getting an amazing number of people listening to this podcast. So shout out to you, listeners, thank you so much. Something I want to say I did recently add in the ability to do a subscription for the website. Now, that subscription, you get access to bonus content through the subscription. All right. So the way that works is if you're a paying subscriber, we've got bonus content that's like ebooks and audiobooks, marketing training, podcasting resources, business resources. Okay. And this is all stuff that it's not news. It's all resources. A lot of it's resources that I've actually purchased to be able to redistribute. And, that's one of the ways that I provide a thank you to our subscribers. Now, with that said, I've got the subscription, but I'm not going to require a subscription to read our news. I'll require you to turn your ad blocker off. I did recently switch that on, which, by the way, if you've ever visited our website with an ad blocker recently, you'll see a nice little drawing of Ally the alligator crying because you've blocked ads. But I'll never put our articles behind a paywall. And if that ends up closing us down because I can't make ends meet on the radio station anymore, then so be it. I would rather, say, okay, well, people apparently didn't want to pay that subscription fee, then just let it go, and instead of just locking the news behind a paywall, because I don't like it. I don't like that tactic. I know there's a lot of news outlets out there that do that, and I think it's just dirty because you're depriving people of important information.
It really is. And I personally get really frustrated because, like, a lot of these stories that are behind somebody's paywall, like, your newsfeed is not going to weed that out for you. You know what I mean? Like, you go to click that and it's like, oh, sorry, you already read your free article this entire month. Please subscribe to read this. And it's kind of like, no, like, why can't, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's very frustrating that if I just am using my regular browser and I click it and my browser knows that I have already read a story this month, why is it in my newsfeed then? Because I'm not going to subscribe to a newspaper to read this one story.
Right.
It's not feasible. It's not tasteful, like it just seems kind of grifty to me.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
Like, if you feel like it's so important that everybody needs to know about this right this second, and then people want to know about it, and then you're like, oh yeah, well, you have to subscribe to our newspaper for an entire year. And what about people that don't live in that market? I'm not subscribing to a newspaper across the country because there's one interest story that I would like to see. It's not happening.
Yep.
Like, I'm never going to do that ever.
So yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing that I trying to rein things back in here a little bit, and looking at the original, what kicked this discussion off is the whole public notices thing. Now, something I played around with, and I'd love to get some feedback on this from the listeners. If email me kbuckler@radiofreehubcity.com or look at the website's contact info. Something I played around with the idea of, and tell me your opinions on it, is adding classified section to the website. Okay, and it's not going to be a very expensive classified section. Okay, we're talking, a fraction of what you're going to pay to have it listed in a local newspaper. And that's something I'm playing around with the idea of. I haven't found one that just yet that I'm satisfied with as far as being able to set it up. But what's your thoughts? What's your thoughts on us enabling that?
Yeah, I know a lot of people have expressed that it is really difficult to find someone's obituary or notices of that kind, because if you don't have a subscription to one of these newspapers, you're not going to see it because you can't see them online for free either. You either have to have the physical newspaper or a subscription. And so I think there's a lot of people that are like, okay, well, what am I supposed to do? Just like every day get up and troll the funeral home website and see if anybody I know died today. Like, what am I supposed to do? And it just seems like people kind of feel trapped in a way. Like they know that there's information out there that they might need, or even information that they might want.
Right.
Classified ads are very often people that have found a lost pet or are selling something or they're having a yard sale, whatever. It's community information. And it just seems like that's kind of a really kind of icky way to pressure people into subscribing to something. Like that seems like the information that absolutely should be accessible.
So let me add this then too. Is all of that necessary in the social media age? And my argument is yes, because not everybody actually has social media, but everybody needs to read the news.
Right.
But some people
Right.
are going to say, well, no, you don't need that because of you got social media. But some people don't have social media. I know that sounds strange.
Right.
There's some people who just for privacy reasons don't have social media. So
Right. Well, and some people like different platforms that are not print based or text based.
Right.
I know a lot of people really love people and videos. Like people really love TikTok. People really love Instagram. I know people personally that get their news from YouTube or TikTok, and they're not reading the news online. That's not the format that they prefer. So, but which is all well and good. But so what happens when you do need to see these classified ads? Where do you go from there? Because that's not available on your preferred platform.
Well, and maybe that's something that we need to explore further. Is we have our YouTube channel, we have an Instagram channel,
right?
We have a TikTok channel, but I refuse to use it just because I don't trust TikTok. But that's for a different time to discuss.
Same, not my thing.
Right. But I think that maybe that's something that we need to explore. But the problem there is we've only got so many minutes in a day. So
right.
So I've got to explore options for us to expand our reach, expand our coverage. But
I like to describe it to people like a holiday meal. It takes you like 2 days to prepare for it. It takes you all day to cook, and it takes everyone 15 minutes to eat. That's exactly how the news is. We work for days or weeks on one story, and then people read it, and in 5 minutes they're done. That's it. It's old news. So like.
Well, not only that, but okay. So let's be honest. It's a lot easier for you and I to type up a story, to type up a news article, than it is for us to record a YouTube video. So right. That's the challenge there. And shout out to some of the YouTubers that are out there that are trying to provide some coverage. You know what? And right. I'll go ahead and I'll give a shout out to Levi Trumbull, because he's doing a good job out there in Frederick County. I really wish that I had the patience and the time to actually to do what he's doing as far as all the YouTube videos he makes. But, I don't, and that's why we stick with the print news.
Yeah.
Now maybe right. With AI, maybe eventually I'll be able to have some sort of an AI newscaster reading the news to people in a YouTube video. And I've experimented with that. And I've had some success with it in the past, but not a whole lot. The problem is it seems very limited in how much I can do it. And then I end up getting 5 views off of it, and I'm like, well, is that worth my time? Probably not.
Well, yeah, and now YouTube, I know, has labels that says like that whatever you're about to watch was made by AI, and that does include AI voiceovers. Like even if you shot an entire video, by hand on your phone with a camera or whatever, it's still going to say that it was created with AI if you use one of those AI voiceovers. Now, I understand that that's just flat honest. You know what I mean? Like they want people to know that this is not a human being reading this, and that it is AI. But I think a lot of times, like people are like, oh, well, this whatever is forthcoming might not be true because it's saying that right. It was made by AI. And I think that that's kind of off-putting to some people that don't understand that could even be you use the voiceover to read it or whatever, and they just see that the following video contains I think it says like sound imagery or other content created by artificial intelligence. And so I think a lot of people might not realize that a real person typed out what they want the AI to say, and it's just reading it. They might think that AI was responsible for coming up with the actual content, and in some cases that is true.
Yeah.
So I think that people are kind of there is a big push to go back to, at least for really important things like news information, community information, election information, like actual news. I think that there is kind of a movement to go back to more traditional sources.
Yeah. Well, and you know, I'm doing what I can to try to provide that traditional source. You know, if you look
Right.
at, you know, look at the Library of Congress, they have a collection called Chronicling America, and the entire collection is nothing but old newspapers from before this was even a country to 1963, I think it is. And you know, you can tell there was two different types of newspapers. There was the type of newspaper that was strictly factual. We're going to tell you what's going on, and there were the opinion newspapers that, you know, it was focused on a specific topic or what have you, specific niche, and you knew it was an opinion because it was that group's opinion. You know, for example, there were German newspapers, Italian newspapers. And you know, these talked about topics and matters that were important to those communities. And I think that we've lost a lot of that, you know, here within the late 20th century, early 21st century. You know, I think we've lost a lot of that original sense of community that news used to build. And I'm hoping
Right.
that we can recapture that. And by the way, so that's in my book. So for those who aren't aware, I actually am in the process of writing a book on this topic. It's called Fixing Local News, and it really lays out the blueprint that I've been using for building Radio Free Up City. And you know, I just released the early access version. It's about 80% done. Please go check it out. I haven't even posted the link on the Radio Free Up City website yet. I should do that, but it's on leadpub.com. Is where you'll be able to purchase it. It's called Fixing Local News. So BB, let me ask you, because I want some important takeaways for both of us on this. What is something that we can do to literally fix local news, to help with what, you know, the challenges with these information news deserts that we have here in Washington County? And not even talking about the fact that we've got some counties don't even have local news outlets here in Maryland. All right, that's an issue for you know, unfortunately I can't fix. But how do we right. make things better here in Washington County?
Yeah, I think maybe one thing we could do that I noticed, like we do on occasion, depending on what it is, you know, the satire brands get shared to different pages and groups a lot more than the actual news. And I think that maybe that's something we could do, is just start dropping articles into local groups.
Okay.
On a more regular, consistent basis. You know what I mean? Because I know that I share our articles, but only if I can think of a person or a group that I know needs to see, that will be interested in that particular thing. And I think maybe we should just make more of a habit of sharing more things to more places, because, you know, there are still a lot of people that have no idea that we even exist.
Yeah. Well, and you know, something else too that I would love to do, and maybe this is something that we can try to plan out, is I don't want to be, and and I hate saying this, I don't want to be the only game in town. I don't want to be the only independently owned outlet in Washington County. I would love there to be other people out there reporting on their own. Now there is the Hagerstown Press Facebook group, which I've been very impressed with what has been going on in that. That's been very. Right. He's been doing some good research in there, but he's only one person.
Yeah.
And it's not a website or anything like that. But maybe that's something else we could do is possibly start holding workshops or setting up training videos or something. I don't know. To try to encourage people, this is how you can properly report local news. Because there's a right way of doing it and there's a wrong way of doing it. And I see so many people try to do it, but they do it the wrong way because they do it from an opinion perspective and not a fact-based perspective.
Well, and I was going to bring that up, as I think that's why a lot of people really love our content, is because we are always very careful to label opinion as opinion right there in the title. Like, and not just way down at the bottom that says this is an opinion, not necessarily how all of us feel type thing. We always opinion, and then say what the title is. And I think that that's really important because I've seen cases where they either don't mention that it's an opinion at all. Maybe it does in a print version somewhere, or it's only, one little disclaimer at the bottom. And I have seen a lot of people in the comments saying, like, this is an opinion piece. Why is it not labeled? Which, I guess what they mean is, why is it not clearly labeled? Because, if you're reading something that's presented to you as a news article and you get 2 paragraphs deep and you're like, this is somebody's opinion, this is not, there's no fact in here, then you probably aren't going to make it to the end to read that little fine print. So I really think that's one thing that everybody doing news of any kind, opinion articles are fine. Opinion articles are great. They spice things up. They're interesting to read. It's always nice to think, learn what somebody else sees from a different perspective, not how you see things, what someone else feels about it. That's great. As long as it's clearly labeled, and those are few and far between, and they do not make up the majority of your content. Yeah.
I mean, I can tell you, it's okay if you want to do a site that is just opinion. All right, now that's more of a blog than a news site, but that's okay. I've seen successful ones in Montgomery County that they cover that kind of stuff. And that's okay if you want to do it that way. But make sure you label it that way. Make sure you don't try to come across as a news site when you're actually just an opinion blog. So
yeah, same with sponsored articles. Like, you need to be very aware of, if it says sponsored article, what does that mean?
Right. Yep, exactly. And okay, so let's talk about that for a minute. So, sponsored articles. That's a fantastic way, by the way, for business to get out there, but they have to do it the right way. Okay, so now we do sponsored articles here at Radio Free Up City, but I clearly label them as sponsored articles. Okay, and I have gotten multiple emails from companies now saying, hey, we want to sponsor an article, but we're going to pay you extra if you don't label it as a sponsored article. I can't do that. First of all, it's illegal.
No, that's not.
But even if it wasn't illegal, I still wouldn't do it because it's not ethical. So,
but you have to imagine that there are other outlets out there that either aren't aware that it is legally or not ethical, or they are aware and they've been told by a superior, like, yeah, it's fine, we do it all the time, something like that. And that's when you really get into a sticky icky mess, because readers are not stupid. And if readers see the same exact thing on 2 or 3 different outlets and it all is voiced in the same opinion, they're going to figure it out, and they're going to know somebody paid everybody to write this story, and that there's no way in heck that 3 different outlets sat down to write an article and all came up with exactly the same hot take. It's very transparent.
I'll even say it's not just the little outlets that do it. I've seen major outlets do that. Okay. And
we've had our outlets go to major outlets like that with absolutely no credit or source or anything.
I'm not going to name names, but I am going to say that one of the instances I saw, I'll tell you what the instance was, and this was such a sad, deceptive article. And this is, I said about there's a right way and a wrong way of doing things. This is the wrong way of doing things. It was an article talking about how new cars are going to be required to have backup cameras. All right. No, I'm sorry. It wasn't backup cameras. Bluetooth. All right. Said about cars are going to be required to have Bluetooth in order to be purchased. But they framed the article in such a way, saying basically every car is going to be required to have Bluetooth. Period. Not just new cars, all cars. And then at the end of the article, they include, but the good news is, here's a local business that'll install Bluetooth audio in your car for you. Now, I'm sorry.
Right.
That is just sad. And, like I said, I'm not going to name the outlet. Yeah. It was a local news outlet that did it, that ran that story. And shame on them for ever agreeing to it. And, so.
Yeah, that's what is called a soft sell approach. So that people might not realize that they're being advertised to.
Yeah.
It's meant to go that way. It's meant to read as factual news with just a little tail end blurb that says like, oh, by the way, if you or someone needs whatever this service or item is, here's a great place to get it. And that is an advertisement. And that's just the way it is, That's not saying that there isn't some sort of fact in whatever piece you're reading. One would hope that it would be mostly factual, but at the same time, you're still reading an advertisement.
Yep. Yeah.
Which then you have to wonder, okay, what are they trying to sell me and who's selling it? And sometimes the answer is a really nice thing. And sometimes the answer is a really not nice thing. So, with any kind of sponsored advertisement on any platform in any way, just always ask yourself, who is trying to sell me something and what are they selling? And just bear that in mind.
Yeah.
Because, sometimes people will be motivated to show something in a certain light, a bias, because they're being incentivized somehow.
Yeah.
So, consumers have to be careful to recognize, these buzzwords that kind of give away that it's an ad.
Yeah. And by the way, the FTC does crack down on that when they catch it.
Yeah.
The problem is they have trouble catching it. And but in any case, so these are some of the struggles that local news outlets face, especially when, if we weren't so high on ethics and it was somebody else owned this radio station, I could absolutely see them, jumping on it because, oh, hey, there's extra revenue. And sure,
right.
There's extra revenue, but I won't do it.
Right.
But then again, there's other outlets out there that they prioritize profit over ethics, profit over actual local people. So,
right.
that's, once again, that's one of the struggles of being a local news outlet is you got to say no to those tempting financial opportunities. And by the way, that company 100% knew what they were doing because they know we're a small local outlet, and they knew that, we'd be tempted by the money, of course, but I'm not tempted by the money because I care more about giving the news to people than I do making extra money, But
well, there's not enough money to make up for losing the trust of your audience.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's all it takes is one time where your audience is like, okay, well, I'm done with this outlet now because that was shady, and that no amount of money in the world can make up for, a maneuver like that.
Yeah. And
people simply just don't trust you anymore, and anything you print they take with a grain of salt.
Yep.
And that's it.
And you've seen this too, is, sometimes we will have people say that our coverage isn't right. And why is our coverage not right? Because it doesn't agree with their opinions. Well,
right.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it's happened a lot of times where, we've just said, okay, if we were factually inaccurate, we were happy to retract whatever it was. Could you point out the words, phrasing, paragraph, whatever that you took issue with? And we have literally had people say, well, I just didn't like the way it was worded. And it's kind of like, okay, but this is why you came to us to begin with. You knew we would be unbiased. So we can't do anything about the fact that if we did not put a positive spin on this, we did not put a negative spin on this, we just stated the exact facts without a whole lot of extra fluffy descriptive verbiage. If people had a negative takeaway, then, there is the possibility that they are upset by the facts. If you can't show me something in here that was incorrect or inaccurate or not factual, or show me where I let my opinion show through or where you let your opinion show through. But if you can't provide any of those examples and you just don't like the tone of something because people are mad after they read it, sorry. I don't know what to tell you.
And this is why I am apparently a red-pilled yahoo.
Oh, yeah, facts. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. You gotta love it. So we've been
really do.
It's been over an hour now, hour and 15 minutes. Actually, probably closer to an hour and 20 minutes. This has probably gone on a lot longer than I think either of us was expecting. So let's go ahead, wrap it up. I think it's been a fantastic conversation. BB, final thoughts regarding the struggles of local news outlets, how we can fix it, how the listeners can help fix it.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that, with the data that we shared from the study, and now that everyone is looking at the same set of stark reality facts, that there is only us and two other outlets for our entire area. Okay, so just telling your friends, like, hey, did you know that there's this website that they don't have absolutely everything, but they've got a lot. Check here. We have weather, we have sports, all of that kind of stuff. So, even just sharing with a friend or asking if someone knows if a particular outlet exists and what they think of it. We also offer affordable really, truly affordable advertising. And I think just read, keep liking, keep sharing, and it's all just really helpful. And also keep hitting us up when you stumble across a story or something that you think might be a story. We love that. We love when people put us on the scent of a really good story or an investigation or something like that. We love that kind of stuff. So yeah, just think of us and think of other local news outlets, and help us be involved in the community as much as the community is following what we have to say.
And speaking of advertising, do you want to eat healthier but don't trust all those preservatives in grocery store food? Well, try Honey Pot Acres Farm, where technology meets nature. Our GMO-free, all-natural products are bursting with flavor and nutrition. Look for us at the Sharpsburg Farmers Market the first Sunday of every month, right behind Battleview Market on Sharpsburg Pike. You can also visit honeypotacres.com for more information about when and where we'll be at. That's honeypotacres.com. And that, by the way, is called a post-roll ad for the closing advertisement for the podcast. Post-roll ads only cost $49.99 a month, except unless, That's actually an internal advertisement because Honeypot Acres Farm is owned by the same parent company as Radio Free Hub City. Therefore, we don't actually get paid for that ad, but that's okay. But that's it for tonight's newscast. And on behalf of BB and myself and all of the Radio Free Hub City family, thank you for listening, and we hope that you'll join us next time. And don't forget to visit our website for more local and national news at radiofreehubcity.com.